This is the Rebound Rundown. I'm your host, Paul Fritchner. Your home for college basketball in the Cincinnati area and across the country every Monday through Friday during the season. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome into the Rebound Rundown. I'm Paul Fritchner. Happy to have you here for the Big East preview with John Fanta. Make sure if you haven't already, you go down, subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, share it around. One note before we get to the interview, John and I recorded this last week, and you'll hear John talk about Butler's Jalen Jackson, their starting point guard heading into the season. Jackson's missed the last 4 games, and it was announced over the weekend that he will be getting surgery and he will miss the rest of the season for Butler. So whenever you hear us talk about Butler and Jalen Jackson, just keep that in mind, that Jackson will not be playing for Butler the rest of this season. Plan for him would be to come back next year. Here's John Fanta of NBC. It's a special day on the Rebound Rundown because we are joined today by John Fanta, Big East, NBC, all that good stuff. John Fanta, it is great to have you on the show, and Big East season right around the corner, so what better way to get it started than to have you on to break down what we've seen so far, give your thoughts on what we may see over the next few months. John, first of all, before we get into talking ball here, congratulations on everything that's happened with you over the last few months with NBC, your college football coverage. It's been a lot of fun to watch, so you made a lot of moves this year in your career, and I applaud you for that. Congratulations, my friend.
Well, thank you, Paul, and congrats to everything that you are doing, that you continue to do, and love this show. And I appreciate you. I love the fans. I thank the fans. You know, I know many of your listeners are in the Cincinnati area. I can't wait to be there on New Year's Eve when Xavier welcomes a top 5 UConn team that is just loaded up. That'll be a high-level New Year's Eve showdown at the Cintas Center with the Xavier team that has grown. But the point is, very grateful for the opportunity to be at NBC, and really thankful to all those people who have reached out and said that. It's an honor to do this job, and I never take it for granted, seriously.
Yeah, Xavier and UConn on New Year's Eve's kind of become a tradition now. It feels like it's happened a few times over the last few years. But let's start there. Let's start with Xavier because, like you said, this show focuses on the Cincinnati area. So we'll start with Xavier, and then we'll get your thoughts on the rest of the Big East. Xavier's clearly turned things around. We're recording this right before the Missouri State game. So we'll assume that Xavier wins this game and rolls into the Big East still on that winning streak. Just give me your impressions of the turnaround for Xavier the last few weeks and what you think of the Musketeers so far.
I think it's one of the best in-season coaching jobs in a short period of time that we've seen from Richard Pitino. This Xavier team, they look despondent. They look like they had absolutely no answers from the first 2 games on. I mean, you barely beat Marist. You survive past Lemoyne. You look lifeless against Santa Clara. And then you get your doors blown off by Iowa. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is bleak. This team could end up winning single-digit number of games. Seriously, the thought crossed my mind, as I'm sure it might have crossed yours. But I got to give Richard credit. What he's done is, you know, they're not the most athletic team. They're not the most explosive team. But sometimes you can coach college basketball a little bit like football. And you slow the game down a little bit, but then you slow your opponent down and you make them guard you for 20 seconds, 25 seconds. And can you find a pathway to good shots? And what we're seeing is Trey Carroll step up and be an alpha. He announced himself as an alpha in the win over Cincinnati. I mean, you just don't go for 30 points and 7 rebounds. The exclusive company he joined there, right? Trayvon Blewett, Jack Nungy. That's amazing. And then, you know, when I look at Borovichinen and what he supplied and the different contributions that they got in that game were so big for them. Milicevic and everything that he was able to do in that game. You know, they're a team that they're going to probably take some knocks in Big East play because that's the league and you go on the road and it's not easy and you get into the dog days. But I will say this, they've got hope. They've got hope going towards league play, and they've got opportunities where when you look at their league schedule, you know, they start at home against Creighton, a Creighton team that this is as down as Creighton's been in years. And then you go to Georgetown and there won't be students at the game. And Georgetown, let's face it, that atmosphere has left something to be desired on their home court. And then you host UConn on New Year's Eve. You know, if this Xavier team, specifically if they can get one, But if they could ever start 2-0, which there's a pathway, I would say. There is a pathway for them to start 2-0. If they could ever do that, the New Year's Eve game against UConn would become a destination big boy game, because if Xavier could ever make that kind of a statement, they would get back into the mix to be talking about being on the bubble, which is absolutely absurd when you consider how this team's early results went. I mean, it's not crazy. I mean, beating UConn would be crazy, but it's not crazy to go into that game, have over a week to prepare with some life. I just think, Paul, they're versatile. They got a couple of tough matchups, and they're doing a good job of using those matchups to their advantage.
Oh, and you think about last year. I mean, Zach Fremantle didn't play in that game at UConn last year, and they had that whole week to prepare because it was the first game coming out of break. They didn't win the game, but they took UConn to overtime. Dante Maddox had a phenomenal performance there. But back to your point about starting 2-0, before the season, John, you kind of wrote off the 6 games against Creighton, UConn, and St. John's, and what could Xavier do in the other 14? Could they make something out of those games? Well, now all of a sudden, Creighton has come back to reality in a massive way. Xavier's actually favored to win that game on KenPom, and going to Georgetown and winning is nothing that should shock anybody if Xavier is able to do that. And all of a sudden, like you said, you're talking about maybe starting 2-0 if they can do that, and that's some serious buzz going into the UConn game. Let's start with the rest of the Big East. I guess we can start with Creighton and just give your thoughts, John, on the rest of the league. There've obviously been some opportunities that have been dropped for the Big East this year, and they're trying to make it up here in this last weekend of non-conference play. What's happened with the Big East this season so far, John?
Well, it's been tough sledding. And you've got a couple of teams that are just having a down year, and it's a perfect storm for the wrong reasons. I think when you look at it, Marquette and Creighton have been so steady in this league. The fact that they're both navigating down years, and that a home game against Marquette right now would be a quadrant 4 game is just absolute absurdity. I mean, this is a Marquette team that they couldn't get past Dayton. They couldn't get past Oklahoma. These are games that went down to the last possession, Paul, and they couldn't win them. And I think what's dangerous is, at some point, they're probably going to pick somebody off. Will be somebody that's on the bubble, because then that's a bad loss. So that's the dilemma that the Big East is dealing with heading into league play, is you have Marquette, Creighton, and then Providence. Providence is talented. They have shot making, but they didn't seize enough of their opportunities, and they were lifeless at the Rady Children's Invitational in San Diego. Look, I know people then equivocated to, all right, doomsday, sky falling, funeral time, all this. This time last year, the Big East had 3 teams in the net top 50. 3 this time last year. As we are talking right now, they have 5. The thing is, the teams that are in that 5, we have not been accustomed to talking about in recent years. So that's kind of pivoted the talking points. If it were Creighton, Marquette, St. John's, UConn, and Villanova, we'd be like, yeah, the Big East is pretty solid. Like, it's all right. But because there's some new blood, people don't know whether they can trust that or not. Only time will tell. The question's going to be, can Villanova and Seton Hall, can those 2 schools sustain? Butler, I'm not sure about. They just lost to Boise State. They need Jalen Jackson back and healthy. The league has to do, some reflection after this season, I feel. I think a lot of people then just go to, okay, expand. Well, as I open things up here, Paul, and I know that Dayton's been brought up, quite a bit for expansion.
Yeah.
Not to be mean, but Dayton's made the NCAA tournament 1 time in the last 8 years. So if you're going to expand, it has to make sense with a program that's going to get there every single year. Now, somebody could say, well, yeah, what about Creighton and Butler and Xavier pre-Big East? Were they going every year? Well, they were going somewhat often, and they were right there. I mean, Xavier has a proud tradition, and that's why they were so appealing. But, I think, to me, I just look at Dan Hurley. I look at Rick Pitino. I look at Richard Pitino now as time goes on. I look at Kevin Willard. I even look at an Ed Cooley still. And I say to myself, there's too many type A personalities, too many longtime coaches to sit in a meeting room in the offseason and say, we're just going to let this be status quo. I think the league knows it hasn't been good enough. There's still time. The biggest thing is, can you avoid only having 3 bids? If you have 3 bids on Selection Sunday, that's a major disappointment. Big difference between 3 and 4. There just is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if it's UConn, obviously a national championship contender. St. John's will figure it out. They don't look like a national championship contender right now, but they're an NCAA tournament team, no doubt about that. And I think they will get back to that point as the season goes on. But then you look and you say that somebody will rise to the top, and there will be a third team that figures it out. I don't know who that is right now. But if we're just talking about a third team rising to the top, can you get a fourth team to rise to the top? John, I don't know right now. And I'd like to think that the Big East can get 4 bids, but we're talking about who could the third bid be?
Well, we are. There's no question about that. I would give it time with Villanova because I think they lose to Michigan and everyone's like, see, they didn't play anybody. And then they got their butts kicked. Michigan's the best team in the country.
Yeah.
They'd be my number 1 team in the country. I wouldn't think twice about it. So let's see what happens with Villanova. Bryce Lindsey, Caden Lewis, and then Matt Hodge, I think, is a real key in terms of his shot making with Tyler Perkins. Duke Brennan rebounds the ball. They got some things to figure out, in terms of just consistency within a game. There's moments where they look like a really good shot making team. They're a top 40 offense. Their defense has been okay.
Yep.
Let's see if they can take care of business against Pitt at home. And then if they could beat Wisconsin on a neutral, Paul, they'd have some quality to their resume. Seton Hall, I think Paul's legit. I mean, I watched this team play. AJ Staden-McCray, this is a guy that came over from Miami. But before he was at Miami, he was at Samford, and he was really having a good career there at Samford for the Bulldogs. And he kind of fell off last year. Shaheen Holloway got him. It was a good get. Bud Clark is a point guard, a real point guard.
Fun to watch.
The Pirates always guard. It would appear that they're better and more balanced offensively. Not appear, they are. And let's see if I think there's legitimacy to them. Like, I don't think it's a reach to say that they can make it if they get 12 league wins.
All right, John, I want you, before I ask, I have 2 more questions. One, Butler. I was really high. I had a couple of Butler broadcasts earlier in the season. I really liked the pieces that they had. You mentioned Jalen Jackson. They've been banged up a little bit. They lose that game to Boise State, which would have been really nice for Butler to get that one. But Butler seems at least to have the pieces to be an improved team this year. I don't think they'll finish 10th in the league, which is where they were picked. They will finish much higher than that, in my opinion. But what's been your take on Butler?
Michael Ajayi is a game changer for that program. To bring him in from Gonzaga, he changes the physicality, the toughness factor. He's a legit wing. He reminds me a little bit of Keelan Martin and the way that Keelan could impact Butler when he was playing at Butler. Finley Bizjak's a terrific story. He could have transferred. Probably could have transferred twice now. He has stayed the course at Butler, and he's getting rewarded because he knows the system. And he's an elite shot maker, Paul. I mean, I fully believe there's going to be a Big East game or 2 where Finley Bizjak has 30 points, and where we're sitting there saying he won them the game. A la when Kamar Baldwin would win games for Butler. Sorry, Xavier fans. I know that he could be haunting because he is. But Bizjak and Ajayi are both studs. I think for Butler, it's can their front court continue to hold up? They've got Drayden Jones on the interior. I'm interested to see, if we see the freshman Xavier Robinson continue to grow as the year goes on. Jamie Kaiser, I like as a Swiss Army knife for them. But without Jalen Jackson, their offense is very predictable. They got to get Jalen Jackson back. Then they have a 3-headed monster of Jackson, Bizjak, and Ajayi.
Yep.
They should finish 6th or 7th in the league.
Okay.
Not 5th. They could finish 5th in the league.
Yeah.
5, 6, or 7. No worse than 7. This team's gotten off to too good of a start. They should beat Providence on Saturday at home.
John, let me ask you this question before we get out of here. Last question. Give me one team that you feel like has underperformed that you're expecting more out of in Big East play, and one team that maybe you think has overperformed that might regress once conference play starts.
Well, nobody's overperformed besides UConn. So the overperform that would fall off, like I don't think that Seton Hall or Villanova are going to have some severe fall off. I think there's some legitimacy to both teams. Yeah. And those would be my 2 picks. I mean, maybe Butler's more human. Underperformed, and St. John's will figure it out. Underperformed, that will be better. The best bet has to be on Creighton. He's too good of a coach to not be a factor in the league. The question is, can Owen Freeman? Owen Freeman's been a shell of himself.
Yeah.
Like what's going on there? And they look like a deer in headlights at Nebraska. But Paul, Nebraska fouled it up and blew the doors off Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So with Creighton, to me, they got to find an identity between Josh Dix and Nick Graves and Blake Harper. Their backcourt's got to find something and find a way to make some shots and then make it tough, because for Creighton, they're offensively powered. They got to be a shot-making team, and they're tough at home. That's why that game at Xavier is so big in my mind, because I think both teams are in a similar spot of either one of them could go on a bit of a run. And it's got to start with that game, because let's look at Creighton. Creighton has Kansas State. Check. They're going to win that game at home.
Yeah.
Then they've got at Xavier, mystery. Home to Marquette. Going to win that game, I think. I would imagine that at home, they're going to be favored in that game. Utah Tech, going to win that game. Butler to close the year. Butler at home. Then you're at Seton Hall and at Villanova. You start stacking some wins, all of a sudden, you got a puncher's chance.
Yeah.
Remember, it's a marathon. We have seen teams come out of the ashes and emerge with a resume. The problem is there's just lesser chances in the Big East. Creighton is still a threat because they have a home court in Omaha, and a dangerous one at that.
John Fanta, I always appreciate you coming on the Rebound Rundown. Hopefully maybe get you one more time here the rest of the season. I know you're a busy man. I can't wait to see you on New Year's Eve, ring in the new year here in Cincinnati. Appreciate it, man, and best of luck over the next few months in the season. It's a pleasure to listen to you, and looking forward to everything you're doing. Anytime,
Paul. And Xavier will still play fast enough. They're still 83 in tempo, but Richard would prefer top 20. I just think with this team, he's got to play a tad differently. They'll be all right. The other team in the Big East that does need to perform better is the one team we didn't talk about, Georgetown. Time to get off the mat and start winning some games, Hoyas. You won some early ones. You got to bounce back at some point. It's got to start right now. Good to see you, Paul. Happy holidays to your listeners.
Thanks, John.